would deliver in court involving specific case. So specificity is quite a central element when you consider the common law traditions. And that is actually not alone with common law peers. So you will see the standing requirement also is employed by the civil law countries. It was considered in many other legal subjects in this Department of Law. The first point you need alert about a professor would be how we can formulate the dispute into any meaningful context for the core review. So, standing requirement. So, in the first chapter, usually praised by textbooks and others. And one of the most visible form of this presentation could be found in the United States Constitution. It's Article 3 in main text. You'll find the word case for controversy. That is an essential ingredient. The article recall and operate and exercise a constitutional power in any adequate way. And many cases about this requirement would also be available if you are a legal researcher who navigates through the case laws and statute and other. So considerable pages will be assigned to deal with this question. Right? So in some cases, default judgment may be rendered, procedural action. Or in other cases, the substantial stage of review will be waived, since it could not qualify for judicial review. For example, how do you consider the environmental who would be disgruntled with pollution and others? What is this? We must include the loss of generations. It will impact on our posterity. So, then what is what invaluable concept of human rights, generations of rights? All human beings would be entitled to decent environment. We have right to live in present planet. So that is quite universal. And second generation right, which would kind of a evolutionary form of new understanding on human rights. Merely a classic liberty would be insufficient in this time, since the history would elementary evidence to kind of respond. That's what invalid context. So the Sierra Club may issue the public agency of the United States, for example, EPA, about their ranking or show response against a threat to the environment. Why do the agencies neglect on this case? Then, how do you consider this case if you are a judge in charge of this controversy? Do you deny cause of action since the standing requirement will not be satisfied. But the kind of a contention is usually recorded. So that is the point you consider against the political branch. We have two branches notoriously. So often we mention tripartite scheme of government, separation of power principle. Other two branches are rather political. You consider, for example, Article 1 for United States Congress. We have bicameralism in the context. Senate and House will be disposed constitutionally about their qualification of member, and also the power and responsibility specifically enumerated cases, and proper necessary clause, or only commerce and a contract clause. The Constitution will provide the basis for federal power from federal power. And also, federalism is usual vegetative in terms of a constitutional contention in the concrete dispute, legal dispute. So, the law is quite powerful through all those three branches. How do you think if any proper to follow the law in any sensible way or any systemic way to penetrate through all concerns and interests we now have considered? Quite difficult question. In common law tradition, we may say the judiciary court would be a central forum to generate the laws. So we often have been minded where the case was in the case. And the strong order will be found in statute if it is concerned of a civil law traditions. That in action might be, in some cases, connected. For example, the inauguration of the United States. How do you suppose theoretically this grand scale of an international organization? It's actually a symbolic institution which is politically representative of global public in some sense. Of course, the course of action, as I mentioned, is in some cases what actually operative in weaker ground. The veto power from 5 permanent members is instituted. In some cases, it might be derogated since the issue would be very urgent and imminent to set the situation. So the wisdom from both camps of tradition could be illustrated once I have commented the collaboration between Dean Ross Park and Carrigan. Actually, it's quite helpful to ground the legal cornerstone of the United Nations. So, since business persons will likely face either a potential or an actual lawsuit at some time, or another in the careers, it is important to anyone involved in business to have an understanding of American court systems, including the mechanics of lawsuits. Even though there are 2 court systems, one for each of the 5 states, one for the District of Columbia, plus a federal system, similarities about. Keep in mind that the federal codes are not superior to the state codes. They are simply an independent system of codes which derives its authority from Article 3, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution. So, you know, the United States is not practicing federalism, or federal state. We consider there are several forms of a polity on this planet. For example, unitary state, or unitary scheme of government would be often used. As you see in Korea, Japan. In other cases, they adopt federal system, Germany or the United States. And there will be some intermediate form of state system, Commonwealth nations, and other international organizations. United Nations is one example of the case. The European Union is fairly associated in this viewpoint. So the state system and we often info from the Constitution, which the specific nation will adopt. Constitutionalism is the basis to understand the ways of federal system. For example, we have one political unity. You can see. So local government is not paired well with the state government in the federal system. Of course, in narrative we have many similarities besides differences. And the federal law in the federal system often is superior to the state laws. So federal supremacy is principle we consider in effect in the United States. In fact, and also in terms of law, the federal codes are required to apply the case of state laws when where they sit. So the federal judges need to devote their labor to search for the state laws which could be applied to their specific case. That could be rulings we see governing from every case. Okay? So we call it area doctrine. In that sense, federal and state codes are equal in dealing with state matters. Nonetheless, the federal issues would divide the two court systems in hierarchy. So the federal laws will preempt the state laws. So state laws repugnant to the federal laws must be rendered null and invalidated, since that is not the law of the United States, since it contravenes the Constitution, for example, and the statute, Congressional Act. So we have a taste of words from one great person, Thomas. And three modern thinkers quite helpful to understand the modern democracy. The U.S. constitutionalism often viewed in that sense. So in other version, we also have some strong proposition that protocols would prevail over contractarian viewpoint. So it is actually contentious, but I consider could be mutually reinforcing in the reality of a U.S. Constitution, U.S. constitutionalism in that time. So 1890th century is quite chaos from British rule and some kind of a fear from British aggression, kind of excessive tax would draw them to be marginalized, to rebel against the homeland state. So the colonial state will declare basic democracy. So monarchy quite actually oppressive in that sense. How to subsidize the financial needs, economic needs, to boost the feudalism. So the war is sacred to liberate the lay people from the kind of a feudal structure. So we, for example, can now claim for sanctity of property right, kind of sanctity of freedom contract. So we are actually emancipated to freely manage our political and economic life. That is what the kind of messiah for worship class. And also the force would stem from that class, worship class. So we see it will be right to denote the U.S. constitutionalism as one of a protocracy movement, so new bourgeois class. How do you assess this economic version of a modern democracy? Then do you benefit from this new governance, regime of new governance? And we now have some taste about legal